My husband, John, is someone who cares deeply about his image but is, in reality, very fragile. When he was diagnosed with a serious illness, I was afraid to tell him for fear he would fall apart. The doctor informed me that the treatment would cost $50,000, but the chances of success were high. One morning, as we were preparing to go to the hospital, I casually opened our savings book only to find that all the money had been transferred out. Panicked, I was ready to call the police. John snatched my phone and said, "That money was just sitting there. It's perfect timing since Karen needs it for her art exhibition, so I gave it to her." I demanded he get the money back. He shoved me aside angrily, saying, "I'm the head of this household. I'll give the money to whomever I want." Fine, if he doesn't want to get the money back and is willing to forego treatment, then so be it. Chapter 1. Today, I need to take John to the hospital for treatment. He still doesn't know about his diagnosis and initially refused to accompany me to the hospital. I told him I was severely anemic and feared fainting on the way, so he reluctantly agreed to go with me. I planned to tell him about his condition once we reached the hospital. I got up early, made breakfast, and then went to our room to wake John up and grab the savings book from the drawer. Worried I might grab the wrong one, I opened it to check. To my shock, there were only a few dollars left. My mind went blank, as if struck by lightning. There used to be $50,000 in there. Where did it go? Panicking, I shouted, and John, who was eating breakfast in the other room, rushed in upon hearing my cries. Seeing the savings book in my hand, he flashed a guilty look before composing himself and said, "Why are you yelling like that in the morning? The money is gone. Where did it go?" I handed him the savings book and reached for my phone, ready to call the police. "I'm calling the police. Someone has stolen our money." My only thought was to recover the money so John could have his surgery. Without it, the illness would spread, and he wouldn't survive long. John, seeing my intent to call the police, snatched my phone away, shouting, "Why call the police? I used the money." "What? You used the money? What did you buy? That money is crucial." I jumped in front of him, demanding to know where the money had gone. John, annoyed, said, "I lent it to Karen. She needs it for her art exhibition." "Karen? John's old flame, Karen White? Get the money back now. We can't give her that money." Hearing my demand, John got furious and shoved me aside, saying, "Why can't I give it to her? I'm the head of this household. I'll give our money to whomever I want. And besides, Karen needs it for her exhibition. If a wealthy buyer likes her work, she'll make much more than $50,000. Karen even promised to repay me $100,000 if she makes it big." $100,000? Karen White's skills are hardly better than a child's doodles. Knowing John's condition couldn't be delayed, I patiently tried to persuade him to get the $50,000 back from Karen. But no matter what I said, he refused. Instead, he turned the argument against me, accusing me of being petty and jealous of Karen becoming a successful artist, claiming I wanted to pull her down. "Ruth, I married you, isn't that enough? Even though Karen and I broke up, we're still friends. Can't I help her?" Chapter 2. I didn't know what to say. The angrier I got, the less I could speak. I stammered, "If you won't go, I'll get the money myself. If she doesn't return it, I'll sue her. The court will support me." John ignored me and got even angrier at my persistence. "You're so annoying. Can't you think of me for once? If you take the money back, how will I face people?" John suddenly paused, a strange expression crossing his face. "Fine, I'll go ask Karen for the money now. She lives far from here, so after I get the money, I'll stay in a nearby hotel for the night and won't come back." He walked to the bedroom with a spring in his step, reminding me not to call him that night. Standing at the bedroom door, I watched him pack pajamas and toiletries, looking more like he was going to stay at someone else's house than asking for money. Seeing me at the door, he rolled his eyes and shut it, muttering, "Always so suspicious, like a resentful woman. It's disgusting. Watching the closed door, my earlier frustration subsided. John and I met through an arranged meeting and had a stable relationship for 3 years. Though we weren't passionately in love, we rarely fought. But last year, after Karen White returned to town after her divorce, everything changed. John began staying out late and arguing with me. Whenever I was upset, he accused me of being petty, saying he and Karen were just friends. If Karen and I were meant to be, we would have married long ago. You wouldn't have had a chance. I used to believe John's words made sense and never thought too much about it, attributing his worsening behavior to his illness affecting his mood. I only focused on saving enough for his surgery, even planning to donate part of my liver, hoping he would appreciate my effort and we could live happily. But in that moment, I realized John wasn't acting out because of his illness, he simply loved Karen and disliked me. After a while, John came out with his suitcase. I sighed deeply. Let's get divorced. Go be with Karen. I'm tired of this. Hearing the word divorce, John looked elated. He excitedly asked, "Really? You're willing to divorce?" I nodded. John quickly typed on his phone, then stood in front of me, saying, "Since you're the one asking for a divorce, I'm keeping the $50,000. It's marital property. You also have to promise not to bother Karen or take her to court. Can you do that? And don't spread rumors about me cheating. We're divorcing because our relationship failed." I agreed absent-mindedly. Most of that $50,000 was his parents' money anyway. In our 3 years of marriage, my income went to paying the mortgage and John's failed stock investments, leaving little savings. Chapter 3. My indifferent attitude seemed to displease John. He sneered. "Since you're the one asking for a divorce, I'll be honest. I never loved you. I married you out of spite because Karen married someone else. I've regretted it every day since. Luckily, you're sensible enough to let me go. This house is yours from before our marriage, I won't take it. But the gifts you gave me are mine. Don't try to take them back." John rambled on until he was tired. "See you at the Civil Affairs office tomorrow morning. If you don't show up, don't blame me for going back on my word." He slammed the door and left with his suitcase. The next day, I took a day off work and waited at the Civil Affairs office. John and Karen arrived shortly after, getting out of a pink Mercedes and snuggling together. John's neck was covered in marks, a clear sign of their activities the previous night. Seeing me, John smirked. "I thought you'd be too ashamed to come. At least you have some backbone, knowing not to hold on to someone who doesn't belong to you." I shook my head. "I have nothing to regret. The only one who might regret this is you." John's temper flared. "What would I regret? Marrying you was my only regret. Your threats are laughable." Karen, with a smug look, approached and shook my hand. "Ruth, I'm so thankful. Not only for the money you saved for so long, which bought me a Mercedes, but also for giving me such a wonderful husband. Don't worry, I'll treat John 100 times better than you ever did." Karen hadn't used the money for an art exhibition but had bought a Mercedes to enjoy. John looked proud, while my sweet words were always dismissed as insincere by him. Clearly, it wasn't that he disliked sweet talk, he just didn't like hearing it from me. He smiled. "Karen, this car is my engagement gift to you. My stocks will rise soon, and then I'll give you $100,000 for your exhibition." Hearing this, I felt nothing but amusement. With John's investment skills, without my support, he'd have lost everything. I wondered if Karen would be as willing to donate part of her liver as I was when she found out about John's illness. I said nothing and got the divorce certificate. Only then did I feel relieved. Holding the certificate, I looked at John and Karen. Why not get married now? True love should be cemented. What if you fight and break up, causing more trouble for others? John looked at Karen expectantly, hoping she'd suggest getting married. But Karen's face changed, then she smiled. I have a plan. This year, I aim to become a world-famous artist. We'll get married next year. Such a perfunctory response should have been obvious to John, but he was moved to tears. Chapter 4. John hugged Karen tightly. I knew I wasn't wrong about you. I believe you'll become a successful artist, and then we'll get married. Of course. Who else would I love if not you? I even divorced for you and came all this way to find you. Karen smiled and glanced meaningfully at me. I don't mean to offend, Ruth, but some people divorce over a mere $50,000, she added. Ruth, I'm not talking about you. After all, you still have a house. This $50,000 car is really comfortable. Have you ever driven one? Would you like the keys to give it a try? I shook my head. No, I'm a bit particular. I have a cleanliness issue. I can't stand using things others have used. What nonsense. John knew I wasn't talking about the car and came over demanding an explanation. But his parents' arrival interrupted him. They must have been out grocery shopping and saw us. John's mother asked, John, why are you here? Weren't you supposed to go to the hospital today? I was planning to bring soup to the hospital later. John was confused. Why would I go to the hospital? His parents exchanged a worried look. Ruth told us you were seriously ill and needed $50,000 for treatment. Why are you at the civil affairs office? John's face turned pale. I'm seriously ill? As soon as the word illness was mentioned, Karen stepped back, clearly wanting to distance herself. John, nearly falling over, barely stayed on his feet. I wanted to tell her that serious illnesses aren't contagious. John steadied himself, ignoring Karen's actions, and yelled at me. Ruth, are you crazy? Telling people I'm ill? I'm perfectly healthy and will live a long life. I see why you didn't care about the $50,000. It was my parents' money. You must give it back, or I'll go to the police and the court. I laughed. Then go ahead. Whoever spent the money will have to return it. I don't believe the law will favor a cheater. Karen, hearing this, relaxed but quickly walked over. Ruth, you're being unreasonable. You shouldn't curse John with such a serious illness. That's not what normal people do. John's parents, not knowing the full story, were more concerned about his health. Ruth, is it true? Is John really ill? I sighed. It doesn't matter what I say now. I suggest getting a checkup to be sure. With that, I left. As I walked away, I could hear John's angry shouts. I won't go. She's trying to trick me. Going would make her laugh. Chapter 5. I returned to work and sought out my boss, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, is the position you mentioned in the neighboring state still available? Mr. Smith looked surprised. Didn't you take today off? Then he nodded. Of course, I've kept it for you. I trust no one else for that role. I thanked Mr. Smith for his trust and formally accepted the offer. Mr. Smith, I'm officially accepting the transfer. Mr. Smith was taken aback. Didn't you say you wanted to stay local to take care of your husband? You said he couldn't manage on his own. What changed? Did he agree to move with you? Or are you really leaving him behind? I forced a smile. He cheated. I'd rather focus on my career. Money won't let me down. Mr. Smith sighed and offered words of comfort, promising a raise in accommodations, and we agreed I'd start next month. He even gave me 2 weeks off to rest. I packed up and went home. At home, I found that John had moved most of his belongings. He worked quickly, accomplishing so much in such a short time. He always had excuses to avoid simple chores, but Love's power is indeed impressive. While tidying up, the doctor called. Miss Ruth, this is Dr. Williams from the hospital. You had an appointment today to bring your husband in. Why didn't you come? I had forgotten. Embarrassed, I replied. Oh, Dr. Williams, John and I divorced. I suggest contacting him directly. The doctor paused, then continued. I already called Mr. John. He cursed me out, accusing me of being in cahoots with you to trick him. He said he's perfectly healthy and threatened to sue me. I know patients with serious illnesses can be irritable, but I've never encountered someone so aggressive. He said he'd arrange to complain about me and take legal action. I sighed. I'm sorry, doctor. I can't help. I hope he comes around. The doctor understood, knowing John's temperament, and sighed. But it's a matter of life and death. I hoped you could persuade him. Since you can't, it's up to fate. Chapter 6. For the next week, I enjoyed rare leisure. Hearing a friend was hospitalized, I bought a gift and visited, knowing I'd be leaving soon. Leaving the ward, I saw John causing a scene. You're frauds, cursing patients with serious illnesses. I'll sue you and ruin your reputation. You're all quacks, trying to scare me for a laugh. I know you're in league with Ruth. Karen stood nearby, looking unwilling to admit she was with John, even hiding among the crowd. Understandable, given John's monstrous behavior. Doctors had warned me that serious illnesses could drastically change a person's behavior. Seeing John now, I believed it. The doctor, scratched and bleeding, could only shield himself, shouting, "Mr. John, I'm not lying. You're seriously ill. If you doubt the results, you can get a second opinion, but causing a scene is pointless. Your behavior is also illegal. Even if you don't fear jail, consider your health. Stress is harmful, especially now. You missed your intake appointment, your condition has worsened." John's rage intensified. Nonsense! What's your proof? Security restrained John, and the doctor, now free, presented the case file. "Mr. John, this is your report. Primary liver disease, high risk. Your condition is critical. The best option is a transplant. Haven't you noticed pain, fever, and fatigue?" John, seeing this, finally calmed down. "But how? My results were normal. Why didn't you tell me?" The doctor relaxed. "Your wife parents and you were informed. Your wife even did a match test and miraculously matched. The $50,000 was for your surgery. But you missed the appointment and cursed at our calls. We had no choice." John's knees buckled, collapsing. Karen attempted to slip away but was stopped by security. "You came with him. Why leave now?" I smiled, ready to leave, but Karen spotted me and pulled me to John. "Ruth, you can't abandon John. He was your husband for 3 years." I shook her off. "Did you forget? John took his lifeline money to buy you a car and betrayed me. I'm not a fool willing to risk my life for a man who doesn't love me." Karen had no argument and ran off. I stayed, curious to see John's reaction to his diagnosis. Chapter 7. Seeing Karen flee faster than a rabbit, ignoring the critically ill John, I felt a deep sense of irony. While John and I didn't have a passionate romance, I had always been devoted to him after our marriage. My income, which was quite substantial, was spent frugally on myself but generously on John. I treated his parents as my own. I considered myself a good match and a good wife. But John never appreciated it. Despite never lying to him, he refused to believe his diagnosis. His initial health report was normal because the abnormal results had been confirmed and communicated to me first, as a standard practice for serious illnesses. When I first learned about John's condition, I cried for hours outside the hospital. But I quickly pulled myself together, did a match test, and informed his parents, pleading for their secrecy and financial help. They believed in me without asking for an IOU, giving me the money outright. I was fortunate. If not for that argument, I might have already been in the hospital, preparing to donate part of my liver to John. Given his words, it's clear he never appreciated my sacrifices. The thought made my skin crawl. After a few hours, John regained consciousness, looking panicked but trying to appear calm. "Are you here to laugh at me? Do you think I'll regret divorcing you and getting sick?" I was puzzled. "So, you don't regret it?" John's voice trembled, but he tried to sound firm. "Why would I regret it? If you could donate your liver, so can Karen. She has savings and can sell the car. I refuse to be indebted to you and live a miserable life with you. True love will help me beat this illness. I won't give you the satisfaction of seeing me fail." I couldn't help but laugh. "John, look around. Do you see anyone else here?" John glanced around nervously but continued. "Karen must be out getting money. She loves me and wouldn't abandon me." I pointed to his phone. "Call your true love and see what she's doing. Stop arguing with me." John glared at me but called Karen. His face darkened with each unanswered call. After the 10th call went to voicemail, his phone finally turned off. I smiled. "What's wrong? Is your true love out of reach? Or am I deaf to her voice?" John stammered, unable to respond. Chapter 8. I was in the mood to talk. In my free time, I looked into Karen's background. Turns out she's remarried. John's voice shook. "I don't believe you." I continued. Karen remarried and had a son. But she was too promiscuous, and her husband divorced her. Desperate, she remembered her loyal admirer far away and borrowed money to find you. John seemed to believe me, tears streaming down his face. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? If I had known, I wouldn't have given her the money or divorced you. Why did you set me up? What did I do to deserve this?" I scoffed. "Why? From the first time you wanted to meet Karen, I told you she seemed shady. Every time she mentioned her art exhibition, she couldn't explain the process. I warned you, but did you listen? You always accused me of being jealous. Now, you blame me? Have some decency." John, seeing I intended to leave, scrambled off the bed, collapsing at my feet. "Please, Ruth? Don't leave me. You promised to love me forever, in sickness and in health. Let's remarry. We can sell the house and use your liver. I promise to love you like before. We can have children, like you always wanted." I felt disgust and amusement. "You think I'm a fool? Instead of begging me, find Karen and get the money back. Maybe you can live a bit longer." John pleaded, but I remained unmoved. Suddenly, he threatened. "If you don't help me, I'll go to your company and tell everyone you divorced me knowing I was sick. I'll ruin your reputation." I made a gesture. "Go ahead. I'll clarify with evidence." John, shocked, fell silent, crying bitterly. I sighed. I checked. "Karen left with your luxury watches. You have nothing now." John looked defeated, muttering regrets. "I'm sorry. We were married for over 1,000 days. You treated me so well. How can you just let me die?" I ignored him and left the room. But John didn't give up. He came to my house daily, kneeling and begging for forgiveness. His parents called, but they understood my decision and apologized before leaving me in peace. Despite enjoying John's daily repentance, I wasn't a confessor, and my home wasn't a confessional. I called Karen's ex-husband, explaining her relationship with John. Delighted to have grounds for divorce, he arrived at the hospital the next day with a group. I didn't attend this confrontation, but numerous onlookers live-streamed it, exposing John's disgrace. John, frail and yellowed from illness, looked pitiful, pleading with Karen's ex-husband. "Mr. Brown, I didn't know Karen was still married. I'm a victim too. Please, tell me where she is. She took my lifeline money." Mr. Brown spat. "You filthy dog. Who's your brother? Innocent? You're calling my wife Karen so affectionately?" John quickly knelt. "Mr. Brown, I swear I didn't know. I'm begging you, tell me where she is. I need that money to live." Mr. Brown laughed, showing a text message. "Don't contact my girlfriend again. She doesn't love you. Your persistence is disgusting. Be a man and know your place." The crowd laughed, and I was stunned by John's shamelessness. Mr. Brown turned back. "Innocent? This message is from you, using Karen's phone. You knew she was married and still interfered. Now you want to know where she is. I'm here to expose your affair and justify my divorce." He tore at John's clothes. "Let everyone see how low you are." John's clothes were ripped off and live streams were cut off. After this, I moved to my new job and never saw John again. 6 months later, I learned their fate from the news. John, somehow finding Karen, confronted her publicly for the money. She sneered. "This man divorced his wife and gave me her money. Now he wants it back? No way." The crowd mocked him. John, looking terminally ill, snapped and stabbed Karen, fatally injuring her. John was arrested but passed away from his illness before trial. Whether he regretted giving his lifeline money to Karen or divorcing me is unknown and irrelevant. In my new city, I found new love and look forward to a bright future with a devoted husband and children. My life is full of hope. The end.